Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I am Nick's Universe YT, and today we're going to be talking about this tier list I made for all the mainline Sonic games. And spoiler alert, there's going to be some opinions I don't like. Okay, let's start off with the S tier. For the S tier, we have Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's my favorite 2D classic Sonic game, and I genuinely enjoy it for a lot of reasons. It introduced a lot of characters like Knuckles. That's about it. It has great level design, and the music changes every second act, which is really nice. Plus, the final boss, Doomsday Zone, Jesus Christ, is really, really good as well, and I really enjoy playing the game a lot. It has a lot of good mechanics, and honestly, it's just one of the better classic Sonic games in my opinion. Next up is Sonic 06. Now, I know this is going to be very controversial, but I've heard a lot of people are more accepting of this now, so Sonic 06 is my favorite 3D Sonic game because it's A, the first ever Sonic game I've ever played, and B, because it has an amazing storyline. It may be convoluted, but damn is it a good story. Alright, next up is Sonic Generations for consoles. There's a 3DS one later on this list. The 3DS port is good, but I like the console one. It has a lot more content to work with. Plus, in the console versions, you just get to play Sonic 1 in the game, I guess. I think this was exclusive to either the PS3 or the Xbox One, but I have it on my Xbox, and it just seems to work just fine on there. So, yeah. Next up is Sonic Mania, whereas with the classic Sonic games, this one takes everything from those games and revamps it up to 100. The music is amazing. It does what Sonic 3 does best, and just revamps the music every second act, and I think that's pretty cool. Not to mention the final boss, Egg Reverie, is just an amazing boss in general. I genuinely enjoy this boss, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Next up is Sonic Origins, where, with the classic games, it revamps them in a whole new way, finally putting Sonic 3 and Knuckles in widescreen for the longest time ever, since the game hasn't been released since Sonic Classics Collection on the DS. That's pretty cool. I think my only complaints about the game are the fact that they just changed up the soundtrack, but it's still a great way to play the classics, unless you have a better way of doing it, like Sonic 3 Air or something like that. But these are for official games, not fan games. Next up, we have Sonic Frontiers, and it's obviously one of the most beautiful Sonic games that I've seen to date. It's the most recent one, and it's really good at the same time. I genuinely enjoy the soundtrack. The way you move around is just so fluid. The story is amazing, written by Ian Flynn himself. I just like it a lot, and honestly, it's one of the better games on this tier list, alongside all these other S-tier, godlike games. Now we're going to move on to the A tier. I forgot what it was for saying, the A tier. First up for A tier, we have Sonic Unleashed for consoles, not including the Wii. This is one of my favorite 3D Sonic games, and for good reason, too. It was one of the best for its time, truly revolutionary in every way, shape, and form. It had a good story. It was, I think, Jason Griffith's last chance at playing Sonic before the role was eventually moved to Roger Craig Smith, who then played him in the upcoming Colors game. I really enjoyed this game, and the Werehog sections were fun. But the reason why it's an A tier, not S tier, is because, well, it kind of dragged on for a little bit too long. Having to collect all the sun and moon medals made the game a little bit more difficult for me, and I spent a lot more time with the game than I happen to admit upon. So that's kind of why it's on the A tier right now, but don't worry, there's definitely other reasons why. We'll get to those later. Next up, we have Sonic Adventure 1 for the Dreamcast, and no, there is not a DX version. Shut up. Anyways, Sonic Adventure 1 for the Dreamcast was extremely amazing. The first ever truly 3D Sonic game, aside from the Sonic Jam, the Sonic Jam hub world that we used to get around to different places, like, the extras, the games, and whatnot. That was supposed to be a prototype for Sonic Adventure 1, but unfortunately was reduced to nothing but a collection hub world, so yeah, basically speaking, Sonic Adventure 1 was a very good game because it was the first ever 3D Sonic game to ever have actual 3D movement and models and everything. It was so good. There was just a few problems. Number one, and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of agreements with this, the the Cat stages were tedious. I love the character, but Jesus Christ. Did Sega really have to go out of their way to make these stages more unbearable than the rest of the game already was? I'm not saying that the game was unbearable. I'm just saying it was a little bit more difficult, judging by the other Sonic games. It was just a little bit more difficult is all. And then we have the story, which seems to interconnect together with all the other characters, but the script is always different for each character, which is weird to me. It just is. Now, apparently there are theories going around that this is just the way that the characters interpret their part of that story when they interconnect, because we're playing as different characters. Of course, we're going to be seeing things from their perspective, but still, it just seems kind of Eh. Alright, next up we have Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Genesis. Okay, genuinely speaking, I would have put this in S tier, but then I remembered something. This game is overrated as fuck. Like, honestly speaking, I really don't quite understand why this game is overrated as it is, but apparently just because it sold really, really well and was like the highest selling game of 1992, this immediately means, oh, let's just put this on a pedestal for other people who like Sonic games. No, don't do that. That's not the way that's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is that if the game is good enough, it's going to get a lot of attention, but you shouldn't just make it overrated like that. Like, honestly. Alright, next up we have Sonic Heroes. I actually played this game, and it's good. It's really good. Just a few problems. The controls are a little bit janky. The story doesn't make any sense, to me at least. Like, all these fake Eggmen, and nobody really notices. Like, not even Shadow or Omega, the hyper-intelligent robot. Honestly, the story just doesn't make sense. The controls are janky. But we do get new characters out of it, so that's cool. Next up is Sonic Adventure 2. Now, again, I would have put this in S tier, but I have my own issues with it. It's really hard to get an A rank in any of the stages unless you're intentionally trying to do so. Alright, next up is Sonic Chaos for the Game Gear, and this game would have gone a tier lower if it wasn't for my true respect for this game. I genuinely like the fact that they actually added in a lot of the things a lot of the 8-bit games didn't have, like the spin dash or even the super peel out. I genuinely enjoy that, and it's really fun to go around the stages and collect all of the special stage, emeralds and everything. It's just so cool to do. I just don't understand why the controls have to be the way they are. Like, listen, I know it was an 8-bit game and they were limited to a lot of movement, but Jesus, man, you could have gone at least a little bit better with this. I mean, Sonic 1 controlled okay. Sonic 2 was better than that. And then we move on to Sonic Chaos, where it's just, I really don't understand. Next up, we have Sonic Generations for the 3DS. This was the first handheld Sonic game I ever grew up playing, and I have a copy of it now, and it's really fun, but it's really hard to get S ranks with modern Sonic, even if you're following an pure S rank like tutorial. You'll still mess up somehow. Even if you're watching the video as you're playing, following all the instructions to a T, there's always something that you're doing wrong. Not to mention, the story of the game is kind of downgraded from what the original story was. We have a lot of script changes because of the different bosses, which, by the way, why are there two separate things that Sonic has never been able to get to? Because those weren't even from his levels or his like general character. Shadow went to Radical City. Shadow fought the Bio Lizard, not Sonic. I'm not genuinely sure why that even happens, but okay. This was the first and last example of a boost game on the 3DS before we eventually just got rid of that entirely. We have no more Sonic Rush games. I'm sorry. Next up, we have Sonic CD. I enjoy Sonic CD. It's a really good game. The concept for time travel has always been a thing since Sonic 1, but I never really thought it would pull off well until I played Sonic CD, and oh my god, they were definitely right on what they were saying. This is a game that has a lot of potential. Too bad that potential was wasted. Literally everything about this game is janky, okay? Not only in the fact that sometimes if you time travel in specific areas of levels, you'll get stuck or you'll just die altogether. Or maybe it's the fact that the time travel is just janky anyways. Like, if you're not getting enough speed, then you're just going to end up not even going to the time travel you need to go to in the first place. Not to mention, there's so many things you need to do before you can have a good future, unless you just went through and collected the time stones like I did. But if you're a completionist, you want to destroy every single Metal Sonic hologram, which are really difficult to find because they're smaller than the robot generators, which are very easy finding. But if you don't collect enough speed to go to the past, then you can't destroy them at all, and it's just stupid. It really is. Still like this game, though. It introduces us to Metal Sonic and Amy, so yeah. Next up is Sonic Pocket Adventure. This game was rated the highest Sonic game on IGN, and I'm not entirely sure why, but when I played the game, it was kind of obvious. Like, it was just a harken back to like the old 2D Sonic games, but with more modern sprites, except for Eggman, who just kind of changes in between for some reason. Yeah, I never really understood that, but there is one gripe I have with it. The fact that the music and the stages all come from pre-existing Sonic games. Like, it's just like they were trying to foreshadow everything that had happened. And in the future, we would have reused levels and songs and assets. Still a really good game, though. I really like it. Now moving on to the B tier, where the first game is Sonic Triple Trouble. The 16-bit version was beautiful. I loved it a lot. It was really fun and initiative and creative. But that's not an official Sonic game, so we're going to have to stick with this one. Triple Trouble was obviously a very great candidate for a really good 8-bit Sonic game. It featured Sonic, Knuckles, Fang the Sniper, I guess. The game control is kind of funky-ish. Not like Sonic Chaos funky, but somewhere along those lines. Honestly, I just don't really see what the appeal with this one is. The 16-bit version is really good, and I can see where they got most of the inspirations from, but I don't really find the game to be very interesting, in my opinion, honestly. This is all based on opinions. If you get offended by any of these opinions, that's your problem. Alright, next up is Sonic the Hedgehog 1. I put this in B tier because, it's an okay game. I wouldn't say it's the best 2D Sonic game. It's the first, but that doesn't mean it's the best. It had a lot of issues. For example, there was a speed cap, meaning that unlike the other games where they just allowed you to go fast, this one had like a certain like fastness on it. It's like, okay, you can go fast, but not too fast, okay? And unless you were rolling into a ball, you couldn't really do much about it. Like, huh? Why do I have to go fast just by rolling in a ball? Almost none of the levels call for that. And if they do, then it's very short-lived. Especially Labyrinth Zone. Dear God, Labyrinth Zone. And Act 3 of Scrap Brain is literally just Labyrinth Zone Act 4. Jesus. Okay, I put all three of the Sonic Advance games here in B tier because, while they might be good games, they each have their own individual issues, but I don't really feel like going over those issues because most of them are just the same. Sonic Advance 3, in my opinion, was just a little bit too clunky with the whole two-character mechanic thing. And Sonic Advance 2 was just Sonic Advance 1, and that had its own set of issues. Anyways, sure, the game may have improved graphically and design change-wise, but it just doesn't really make sense in the context of things. Alright, now we have Sonic Colors for the DS and Sonic Colors for, the Wii. The DS version wasn't that bad. It was like a rush game, but in Sonic Colors form. Also, okay, riddle me this. Why is it that we can get, like, full cutscenes of the Wii game in this DS game, but we couldn't get cutscenes of the Generations game for the 3DS, which was more than capable of doing so? I have to know. Anyways, Sonic Forces. The game wasn't that bad. Stop complaining. It just showed how, how much Sonic Team at least tried to make it at least a little bit more interesting and original. With the character of C Creator, that was perfect, but it just wasn't, practical in any sense. Yes, we were saving Sonic and the rest of his friends, but were we, though? We would have just played as Sonic and it would have been enough. Also, the inclusion of Classic Sonic just to tie in with Sonic Mania, it was a good idea at the time. Now it's just, I'm not really too sure. Next up, we have Sonic R, which was a good racing game, if it not for the fact that each and every single one of these goddamn levels had a banging soundtrack. I usually get distracted playing this game, and yeah, it's kind of easy. Trying to go for all the emblems was like a nightmare because of the fact that I kept on stopping just to have, like a really good, time with the music. It was jamming. I mean, come on, dude. It was jamming. Next up, Sonic Colors for the Wii. It's exactly what you'd expect. It's a 3D Sonic game that involves boost, but this time you have to use wisps instead of rings or destroying enemies you still destroy enemies, but the rings don't even count in this one. You just gotta have to get aliens and destroy enemies. And the writing for this was, oh boy, hasta la bye-bye, suckers, was one of the worst lines, and yet Sega keeps using it for most of their Eggman promotional material. It's just odd, to say the least. Okay, now for those of you wondering why I put Sonic Lost World in C tier twice, it's because there are two separate versions of the game, one for the Wii U and one for the 3DS. In my opinion, they're the same exact amount of, C tier that you can get. Now, if these were on any other tier, I would have said the exact same thing, so here we go. C tier, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2. It was slightly better than Episode 1. This had refined graphics, it controlled at least a little bit better, it included Tails and Metal Sonic, and yeah, that's just about it. This game was as dog water as you can receive, but it was better than Episode 1, so there's that. At least they tried going for something original with this game, instead of just, rehashing old levels and calling them new ones. It was just weird, alright? Next up, we have Knuckles' Chaotix. I like this game. It's not the best one, but the whole thing with, like, the clunky controls, like, you have to connect another character to the ring in order for that to even work, and then you have to make them stay in a certain spot just for you to go faster. Charmy Bee is the best character in this whole godforsaken game, and I'm not even sure why. Next we have Sonic Lost World. I'm going to say for the 3DS. It's the same as Lost World for the Wii U, but different because it's smaller handheld chunks, and it's not exactly the same level, but, I mean, what can you do, really? It's just Sonic Lost World. You have a couple new bosses you have to fight called the Yeti. No, sorry, not the Yeti, because that's like a whole thing in itself. The Zeti, which involves a lot of stereotypes. Like, for example, the old one is like a Japanese kung fu master. The girl one is girl, like, haha, funny, nail broken kind of stuff, which I don't really understand why they would do that. The fat one is obviously hungry with food. The one who looks like he's in a punk band acts like he's in a punk band. The one that looks sad and depressed is sad and depressed, and so forth. I really don't understand why these characters had to be stereotypes. The game wasn't even that funny, but on the chances that it was funny, it actually kind of made me chuckle. It actually made me laugh. Same goes for the Wii U version, although the Wii U version has more expansive levels, plus 2 new bits of DLC, where you could play in a Legend of Zelda Fieldscape, plus a Yoshi's Island level, which is completely 2D, just like the original Yoshi's Island game was. That was the quickest tier I think I've ever gone through. Next up is D tier, where we have Sonic 4 Episode 1. This is literally the definition of, like, if nostalgia was remade in, like, the early 2020s, and then they didn't even get most of it right. Or maybe just, like, another example would be The Velma Show, where they got the characters, like, names right, and they got references, but other than that, it's just goddamn horrible in every sense of the word. The physics are fucking weird. The way the game controls is just fucking weird. If you're playing this on mobile, you better be prepared to die at least a couple thousand times. The special stages are special stages that you control, mind you. You have to control them. The mobile version's even worse somehow, because when you're going through loop-de-loops, the whole screen turns, and you're wondering whether or not your phone is goddamn broken or not, just for you to find out that the camera always follows Sonic, except for when he finishes the goddamn level. It's so weird. The first level, Splash Hill, is obviously just Green Hill Zone. The second one is Lost Labyrinth, which is just Labyrinth Zone. The third one is Casino Night Zone, no. It's not Casino Night Zone. It's Casino Street Zone. And then we have, like, the last level, which is Mad Gear Zone. Hello, this is just, like, fucking... I can't even with this one. That's Metropolis Zone. It's fucking Metropolis Zone. Sonic 3D Blast, I really don't like this game. It controls like ass, and the bosses are hard to defeat. It took me a while to even get to the last boss, and you don't even get, like, an actual supersonic ending either. It's literally just, oh, well, why not? We're just gonna go right ahead and do what we always do. Just leave out important elements of a game that we've already established are important. It's just stupid. It's stupid. Next up, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 1 8-bit. This game is the worst version of Sonic 1 you could possibly play because, well, I mean, there's also Sonic 1 for the GBA, but that's not really a mainline game. It's not really here, so we're not even going to count that. Sonic 1 8-bit is the worst version of Sonic 1 you could play, because not only is Labyrinth Zone a lot harder than it usually is, because the fucking slowdown, there's also a lot of, new levels in the mix, like Bridge Zone. Who needs Bridge Zone? Just say Marble Zone, Jesus Christ! The controls are a little bit off and wonky. The final boss isn't even the same as the Genesis version, and, I can't even with this game. I can't even with this part of the list. This is just making me irrationally angry at this point. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for 8-bit, like, Game Gear and Master System and shit. This actually came out before the initial 16-bit release, which I don't even know how it's even remotely possible, but it just is. And Tails is in every single piece of the title cards, but he's nowhere to be found in the game except for when you collect all the emeralds, defeat Robotic, and then you save him. I mean, and if you don't save him, he just appears in the sky. But if you do save him, both of you appear in the sky. What, do you just die like halfway through? Like, what the hell? This is making me have an aneurysm. A large one at that. Okay, now that I'm a little bit more calmed down, we're going to go ahead and start off with the F tier with Sonic Blast. This game would have been an amazing 2D Sonic game for 8-bit consoles if it weren't for the fact that, well, the game controls like ass. It may be a good game in some people's eyes, and I totally respect that. And I genuinely enjoy the fact that everybody else has things that they can enjoy. But Sonic Blast, in my opinion, isn't a very good game. Sure, you may be able to play as Knuckles, but the bosses are a little bit off on the wonky... Actually, no, they're a lot off on the wonky detection because the hitboxes don't even count half the time. And you can't even tell if you hit them unless you hear a certain sound. And the final boss of the game just doesn't even feel like a final boss. It just feels like a regular, ordinary boss. And I don't really feel like that should be used for many Sonic games like this. Honestly, I just can't figure it out for myself in order to save my life. Alright, Chipper attitude again. We've got Tails Adventure, which is literally the worst Tails game I could possibly play because not only are the controls janky, but the way you have to do things is just fucking stupid. You have abilities, but you can only bring like 3 of them with you. And it just doesn't feel like a true Sonic game because now you're messing with bombs. And honestly speaking, I just don't really like this game at all. This is one of the worst Tails spin-off games I've seen in a while. Next up, we have Tails' Sky Patrol, where this entire game takes place in the air, and the only thing keeping you up is mint candies, which are canonically confirmed to be Tails' favorite food. But why that? Why not something else like caffeine or something? Like, if Tails gets tired that easily, why do mints keep him awake? It's just stupid. Alright, next up and last up for the F tier is Sonic Labyrinth. I do not like Sonic Labyrinth in the slightest. Apparently, Eggman replaced Sonic's normal shoes with these slowdown shoes, which, used with the power of the Chaos Emeralds, apparently means that you can just slow down his shoes. My question is, how in the hell did Eggman get a hold of the Chaos Emeralds? Those things are usually found in special stages. How did his fat ass get to them? I just don't understand this game. Plus, if you walk, it's slow, but if you spin dash, it's faster, but it's also more janky. Not to mention, you're in an underwater stage in one part of the game, but for some reason, you don't fucking drown like the rest of the games do. Like, what? This just makes no sense. I just don't understand. It makes no goddamn sense in the slightest. And then we move on to the not played yet, which means I have yet to experience these games, but I bet at least most of them are good. Anyways, that's going to be it for the tier list. I hope you all enjoyed, and yeah, I'll see you later, I guess.